Hi there, and welcome to another episode of the Rabid Dog's House, where we like to discuss lost or forgotten horror gems with a little bit of bite. I'm Justin, and tonight we are going to discuss 2001's Frailty, directed by Bill Paxton, starring Bill Paxton, Matthew McConaughey, Matt O'Leary, Jeremy Sumpter, and Powers Boothe. In the present, an FBI agent is approached by Fenton, a man who wants to lead the agent to a serial killer while telling the story of growing up with his brother. In the past, Fenton and Adam live with their widowed father. The boys' lives are forever changed when their father begins to believe he has been visited by an angel of God instructing the family to hunt down and kill demons disguised as human beings. Frailty is for the horror fan that enjoys unexpected twists in combination with family and religious horror. Also joining me tonight is the fabulous Zena Dixon. Well, thanks again, everybody, for joining us for another episode of the Rabid Dog's House, where we like to discuss lost or forgotten horror gems with a little bit of bite. I'm Justin, and with me, as always, is the breathtaking, beautiful, and wonderful real queen of horror, Zena Dixon. How you doing tonight, Zena?
I'm doing well, Justin. How are you?
I'm also doing well, ready to jump in to our non-spoiler part of the review. Later
Right.
on, we'll have spoilers. We'll let you know when. But non-spoiler review, we're getting ready to talk about 2001's Frailty, released in the US in 2002. Frailty is a great one. I love this one. It always kind of makes me think of summer. I think it was released in April of 2002 in the US, but the
Mhm.
DVD or something must have come out for rent or sale in the summer, which is when I first watched it. And so it always makes me kind of think of that. Now, my parents were divorced when I was about 12, and once school was out for the summer, I was able to spend more time with my dad. He worked crazy hours, so me not being in school actually got us to like see each other.
Mhm.
And so I could relate to being 12 and hanging out with my dad and my brothers. I was never as close to my brothers as Fenton and Adam, but the
Mhm.
essence was there. So Frailty, even seeing it in 2002, it had an almost nostalgic feeling for me, or a nostalgic pull. And the
Mhm.
thing that I think makes Frailty work is the family dynamic of this widowed father and two brothers. The added element here is that the father believes he's been given visions from an
Mhm.
avenging angel, but at this time, the screen generation of slashers was starting to dip a little. I still loved them all, but they definitely were kind of seeing the same ones again. So it was nice and refreshing to have something like Frailty come along. It has this low budget but high production value.
Mhm.
There's not a mass killer running around. Instead, from Fenton's point of view, it becomes the terror of a parent possibly losing his mind.
Mhm.
Now, it ultimately has this big twist, which we'll discuss about spoilers, and it's kind of deceitful to the audience, which we'll get into once we head into spoilers, which normally I don't like twists that are kind of dishonest, but it works for Frailty. I think it works really well. And in fact, it kind of makes it kind of special. I
Mhm.
think the performances are solid. I was very sad when Bill Paxton passed away because I always was very happy to see him every time he popped up in media. From Aliens to Twister to Titanic to Big Love, Bill Paxton had this really natural, like every guy quality that even though he was a star, he always somehow felt approachable, like an every guy kind of guy.
Yeah.
And he also directed Frailty, which is no small feat considering the committed performance that he definitely gave at the same time.
Mhm.
The actors playing young Fenton and Adam are believable, although I don't know if it was because of Frailty, but Jeremy Sumpter, who plays the young Adam, always kind of gave me this uneasy feeling when I saw him in anything else like Peter Pan. Maybe he was just too unsettling in this, or maybe he was just too frustrating because I feel like I want to yell at him at times because he's just
Yeah.
being super naive.
Yeah.
Um, and of course, Matthew McConaughey is very solemn and effectively unsettling too. And in some ways, he reminds me of like the put together version of Bilmer from his performance in Texas Chainsaw Next Generation. Now, there it's
Yeah.
a very different, craziness, but
Mhm.
there's some sort of, I don't know, I see some sort of similarities there, which I'll get into when I get into the performances. But again, at this time, Matthew McConaughey was really starting to get more into his dramatic roles, and this fits right into that. So overall, it's easy to jump into the story of Frailty, and based on how everything turns out, it's definitely one you have to watch more than once to see all the perspectives, to see how well crafted this movie is. It's an effective thriller, a religious psychological horror, and I loved it. But Zena,
Yeah.
what are your thoughts? How did you first come into Frailty?
Oh, sure. Okay. Similar to you, I believe that I did check it out on DVD when it was like released. I remember hearing about it, and it's so weird with the character who plays young Fenton, Matt O'Leary. I remember seeing him in this Disney movie from 2000, probably like a year or two before. Um, Frailty came out, but before Frailty, I remember seeing him in Domestic Disturbance, which I love that movie as well. It's so good. I knew you would
Yeah.
love it too. But
Yeah,
he
I
was in
love
this
that
other
one.
Disney movie with our tastes. It just matches. He was in this other movie, this Disney movie called Mom's Got a Date with a Vampire. So it's exactly what you think it is. His mom literally has a date with a vampire that she meets in the supermarket. It's like, oh, cool. So I thought it was pretty cool that he was doing something more of a serious tone, and I think I was like, because I think I'm the same age as him, so I think I was like maybe 12 or 13. I don't even remember around that time. So I remember checking it out. Really didn't know anything about it. I remember seeing Bill Paxton and, Weird Science, and I thought it was so cool that he directed this. And this to be his directorial debut is insane because, like you said, it's like, it feels like an indie movie, but it's not indie. You know what I mean? It's very like
100%.
I love the storyline. It's nothing too crazy where it's just like you have like this man who's taking care of his two young boys and they seem to be happy, in the late 70s. They seem to be comfortable, they seem like they love each other. He has a good relationship with his sons. His sons are close, boys being boys. Cool. And then it kind of turned into something else. And one of the reasons why there's a lot of reasons why I love this movie. But one of the reasons why I absolutely love this movie is because when I first it went someplace I didn't know it was going to go. It's not a predictable movie. It literally did have me at the edge of my seat. And whenever it comes on, I have to watch it. It's
Yeah,
just it's one of those movies, and like you, it feels like a summer movie. Like you could feel the heat. You know what I mean? Where it's just like even thinking back to when I was a kid and how excited I was about like summer vacation. Spending time with because I have two brothers and I have three sisters, and I'm the youngest, and my oldest sister's like 10 years older than me. So there's like an age gap, but we were still close. You know what I mean? So I
yeah.
know that feeling of being close to your siblings. I don't know the feeling of, murder.
Right, right,
Obviously.
exactly.
Can you imagine? No, but no, obviously, but there's just so much things that's likable about this movie because it's relatable. As a kid, I remember just being excited about like summer vacation, spending time with my brothers, my sisters, my parents and stuff. So this movie again, it's like it's not a horror, but it has so many horrific things that happens. And I remember there were some parts that really rubbed me the wrong way and I still think about. Still kind of just creeps me out like the thought of it. And we'll get to that because that's more like spoiler territory. Oh, and similar to you with Jeremy Sumpter, afterwards he was playing Peter Pan. And it's just like, what?
Yes.
Like, yeah, that was like creepy. And he's also in like this Lifetime movie. It's called like Cyber Seduction, where basically he's just this young boy, teenage boy who just gets like addicted to porn. I don't know. It's just it's a Lifetime movie. Like obviously he did other movies, but I just remember seeing that one and Peter Pan. And it's just like I don't trust you, and I knew it. So
Absolutely. Absolutely.
yeah,
Yeah, I don't know what it is. Maybe he just is that good of an actor or something, but this being my first experience with him, I'm always unsettled when I see him. Like, I don't know. It's like he's got
yeah,
something going on back there that I don't
yeah,
know. But okay, well, we'll jump right into spoilers. I think spoilers, you've been warned. I think we both enjoy this movie, and I think we want to
yeah.
get into the nitty-gritties of it. Um, well, let's start with performances, and I'll get it going with Bill Paxton. Now, I have specific things I want to say, but one thing that you kind of started to allude to is you understand, just like me, we can relate to the family dynamics of it, not the sort of murder. But I don't know if you were about to say this, but I was going to mention this later on in one of my favorite scenes. Bill Paxton, as the dad in this, does have that sort of quality that, like, you've talked about your dad before, and I don't know if I really got to. My dad was he was either really strict or really like go jump off the roof and have fun. Like there was no real middle. So, but
Mhm.
I can understand, and Bill Paxton really has that. you would follow his orders if you're his kid. He has that quality
Right.
that like if your dad's telling you to do something, you're going to do it even if you're not 100% sure why. And I
Hmm.
think Bill Paxton is the director. I think he wins with Frailty. And like you said, it was his directorial debut. It is scary, effective, thought-provoking. It delivers a nice twist. And as dad, you can see what a good dad, because I don't think he actually has a name in this. But
Hmm.
as dad, you can see what a good dad he was before all this happened. He portrays this strong sense of right
Yeah.
and wrong, but you can believe from Fenton's point of view that he is losing his mind, and it
Hmm.
makes him kind of terrifying. I think for Bill Paxton to be able to give such a well-rounded performance while also playing the director, it's saying something. It's really saying like what a talent we lost and what a talent he was at the time.
Hmm.
Matthew McConaughey, like I said earlier, he seems like a kind of put together filmer in this. And what I mean by that from Texas Chainsaw Next Generation, which is also one of my favorite Matthew McConaughey
Yes.
roles. It, you know,
Same.
yeah, Vilmer was always though rambling on about something with these like really committed speeches. And as Fenton slash Adam here, he does the same thing where he has that like solemn quality with this committed speeches that he's giving. But to truly appreciate the duality of Matthew McConaughey's performance that he achieves in this, you really do have to watch Frailty more than once because it's actually a really terrific performance.
Yes.
Um, Matt O'Leary as young Fenton. Yeah, I forgot about Domestic Disturbance, and I really did enjoy that one. That's one with John Travolta
Hmm.
and Vince Vaughn, right? And yeah,
Yes.
he's great in that too. And I don't think that he won any Young Artist Awards for Frailty, but he should have at least been nominated. He seems very genuine. This he seems like Adam's genuine older brother, and that
Hmm.
as this older brother, he has this extra connection with dad. He goes the whole range of normal kid to terrified kid to losing his mind kid that is shattering right in front of us. We already got into it. Jeremy Sumpter as Adam. I think he does do a great job of playing an appropriately nagging younger brother.
Yeah.
I am the youngest too. I know that I was a little bit whiny. Now, my older brothers never would have like folded as quick as Fenton about going to see Meatballs versus I forget the other
Yeah.
movie he went. Oh, The Warriors.
The Warriors.
Heck, I
Yeah.
know they wouldn't because The Warriors was one of my brother's favorite movies. But my brothers never would have like been like, okay, Justin, we'll do what you want. Never. But I probably was nagging like Adam, and he does do a really good job of that.
Yeah.
And real moment for Adam is in the climax, which we'll get to when we get to the ending. But he was surprisingly scary when he attacks in the cellar. He's able to pull off that quality of like and maybe this is what I find unsettling about him. He pulls off that quality of being innocent and dangerous.
Yes.
Like like in the scene where he presents to his dad that one of his schoolmates is probably a demon. Like I'm gonna refer back to this at the end when we get more details because I think like talking about this as a religious horror, it could lead to a lot of problems.
Hmm.
But he does a great job in delivering that, and you know what he's doing. And he's an innocent kid, not so innocent kids, trying to set his
Yeah.
kid up, his schoolmate up to be killed. It's pretty crazy. And then Powers Booth, I think he's great in this too. You believe he is this like straightforward FBI agent and has all this control or authority, but you also can believe that he is a psychopathic demon. So I know I've seen him in a dozen things, and I think he's played villain and hero both. So I think like he can do that really well. But what
Yeah.
did you think of the overall performances of the movie?
Oh man, hands down, Bill Paxton just completely blew me away. I have so much to say about his character, which I'll wait until we get to that because it's just like when I first saw the movie, I really thought that he was actually seeing demons. What was that about? We'll get to that. So his performance, and then just the fact, like I said, when I first watched it, I don't think I realized that Bill Paxton also directed it. And the
Hmm.
fact that where it's like not only were you a lead, he had such a strong presence where it was just like seriously a haunting kind of performance. You know what I mean? Like truly chilling. Matthew McConaughey, like I love him in this movie as well as him as in the Texas Chainsaw Massacre movie because that's one of my favorite movies, hands down. Like I think it's so much fun with that. But I agree with you. He is kind of still like that character, except a little bit more sophisticated. Like he
Yes.
knows how to like hide it. I don't feel like the character that he played in Texas Chainsaw would be able to pass by
Right. Right.
normal. You know what I mean? I think that he'll go
Yes.
on his long tangents and
Yes.
just
Yes.
reveal, what's going on with that. So just the fact that he kept his composure, I mean, and we'll get to the twist, but I didn't see that coming, like at all. Powers Booth, like, oh, okay, it's so crazy now because like rewatching it after watching it so many times, it's like little things where you can kind of, I feel like I can kind of see, like, oh, kind of see something, but that first time around, you don't see it. And I know I'm speaking in circles, eggshells type of thing, but you get what I'm saying. I feel like he was a strong character where it was just like, okay, he played a very curious FBI agent who was looking to, know what happens, right? Matt O'Leary as young Fenton, kind of like you said, I'm really surprised as well that he didn't win any type of awards or
Right.
that he was at least nominated.
Right.
Because again, when you're older and you're rewatching it and you look at this person's like performance, so he was probably like between 12 or 13 years old when he did that role. Like in the range, he had to be angry, he had to cry. There was so much going on, and we'll talk about like our favorite scenes, but there's one scene where it's just like it's something so subtle, but it kind of ties the movie together for me, and kind of brings it to life. Jeremy Sumpter, a little kid, but he was able to carry it. I also love that scene as well when he told his dad, he gave him a list, his own particular
Right.
list, because God told him to. He did play the little brother, the little naggy brother perfectly. I was the youngest sister, or the youngest sister, so I was super I'm still naggy to this day. You know what I mean? I just thought it was so funny. Like they had such a cool relationship, and he was still a kid throughout it all, throughout the horrificness, he was still a kid calling his brother a butthole, running
Yes.
off.
Yes.
It's cute. Like he's cute, but he's terrifying. And man, I guess I'll just stick with those four. Four?
Yeah,
Okay.
because I'm gonna weave into about the demons and stuff as we're
Okay.
talking. So
Cool.
yeah, so I guess we'll jump into our favorite scenes. I'll say for me, the first demon victim, I think, is one of my favorite scenes, especially because it's played the character in that is played by Cynthia Edinger, who, she was in one of my all-time favorite canceled way too soon TV shows, Carnival. She was
Oh.
amazing in that and believable in this because in Carnival she played Rita Sue, who's like one of the naughty dancers in the carnival, but she really gives a tour de force performance in Carnival as Rita Sue. And I mirror that because what she does in that is she can totally pull off that like 100% vulnerability and that 100% she can do something sinister. And
Mm,
that's what's needed in this role in Frailty because her sequence is so effective and horrifying as the first time you watch this, you think she is this helpless victim. So
mhm.
that the reveal of her past later on is really able to stick with you because you have to remember, like, okay, this first, demon or victim, and then now here's her play out moment of what she really did. So the reveal of her past later on is really able to stick with you. And I think that Cynthia Edinger gives a great performance, but
Yeah.
it's also one of my favorite scenes. To see her at first, you're like, what is going to happen?
Mhm.
At this point, you think dad is crazy. And so it does
Yeah.
make your stomach sick. You are horrified for Fenton. I just think it's like such a great scene in horror in general. I also really love the grocery store parking lot sequence.
Oh.
The building tension in that scene is pitch perfect, and a lot of
Mhm.
this has to do with Bill Paxton's direction. He knows what he's doing. We've already seen the first kill, and we as the audience know that there's more, but young Fenton is hoping that this has like gone away. And I
Yeah.
get that. That's a very kid thought. Like you just hope your problems are going to go away. So the way it's filmed from Fenton's point of view, I love that like it's like you're in his point of view and the camera is like looking back at dad, looking back at the store, looking back at dad. You see the guy coming out of the store and it's just building this tension and you're dreading, this old man coming out. And I know that feeling of like the dread of having to listen to your father. I can remember that. That's what I was alluding to earlier, like, and what Bill Paxton does well, similar to my dad. I can remember him giving me an order and feeling like I had to do it or I was going to get in trouble.
Yeah.
So much happens in this scene that I just think works. And is, again, another reason why Frailty is worth it. And
Mhm.
then my other real favorite sequence, and because it's not a really long movie, it kind of gets right to the point, but the sequence with the sheriff is so frustrating, himself, because he's really dismissive of Fenton, which, although in retrospect, and it's another thing that makes this movie work, is you realize that the sheriff might not have believed Fenton because dad was being protected. So if, like, the mythology of the movie is working, he's being so dismissive of Fenton because dad is still being protected, so but I think it's, he's believably frustrating. And however, when he is finally able to, believe Fenton, for Fenton, you have this false hope that, like, Fenton is going to be saved. This is how they're going to get out of it. Because you know that you're hearing the narration from Matthew McConaughey, so you know somehow he's going to get out of this, but you hope he's going to be saved, and then realizing now Fenton is completely alone. He is completely isolated. It's terrifying.
Yeah.
And then, of course, all the sequences of Fenton digging and digging, and then to be, like, locked in the cellar. And you
Oh,
you kind of mentioned it. It's the moment when Adam is like, you butthole, because Adam is trying to, like, help his brother, give him water. So I know what it was like, when I would see one of my brothers in trouble for something, like if they were, like, sent to their room, I'd walk by and I'd be like, "Do you need anything?" Trying to help. And again, there's just so much in this movie that works, I think, or is so authentic. But again, the moments of Fenton digging all the way through the cellar, symbolically, we have to question at a certain point what our parents have taught us.
hmm.
Most parents want what's best for their kids, but it's based on their own beliefs. And at a certain point, as we go through adolescence, we have to decide for ourselves what is right or what is wrong. And based on what Fenton knows is going on, he does what he thinks is right. So he digs and he digs, and it's what he's digging what will ultimately become his own prison. You
Yeah.
admire him for obeying his dad while defying his dad. He's doing both. And ultimately, after being locked in the cellar, he attacks his dad back. But even at that point, we feel a certain sadness for dad. So getting into the sequence of, like, when finally Fenton, fights back, because it's scary and you're scared for Fenton because, I mean, Bill Paxton's a man compared to this boy, but there's also this chill that comes across you when the dad is whispering something to Adam.
Oh,
So we have, like, Fenton's been digging and digging. We believe that he's not. I didn't believe that he had changed, but I believed he had some sort of plan. But, like, when you see it play out, you're like, okay, here's the moment. And something's wrong here, though. And so when the dad is, whispering to Fenton, or I'm sorry, when the dad is whispering to Adam, there's a chill. Something's going on here. And we're also nervous because there's this other person still in the room, whether you're nervous, whether it's a real demon, or you're nervous about, like, well, wait a minute, if this guy gets away, they're all going to be in trouble, because you feel for Fenton and Adam at this point. So when Adam all of a sudden leaps up and attacks, we don't know if he's going after Fenton. We don't know if he's going after the man. We don't know what's happening. It's just from the moment of Fenton digging through the attack, through Dad's death, it's this dramatic, horrifying setup of sequences, and it's exciting and it's tragic. And I think it's just really effective. But, so, what are your favorite scenes and sequences of the movie?
oh man, there's so many, but similar to you. So first, the scene that I was kind of talking about earlier, it's when young Fenton, his dad pretty much locks him in a cellar, just keeping him in that little box, type of thing for him to get his faith, right? And something along the lines that he says, like this is around the time when he lost track of time. And he said that his little 12-year-old brain couldn't comprehend, and when you're watching a movie, like you think about it. I remember when I was 12, when I was 13 years old, I couldn't imagine being in a situation like that. And even though this is just a character, you feel for this character that his own dad is killing people. And he brought in him and his younger brother. Now he's locked in a box for trying to do the right thing. That's off. But the fact that he was such a young actor and you could see like him literally losing his mind. And it was done so effectively. Bill Paxton did such a great job just having him be like a floating head. Because even
Yes.
thinking about it, when you're in pitch black, right? You don't really know what your eyes are doing, what your face is doing. Like it doesn't really even matter since you've been down there for over a week. So I thought that was like a really, really effective scene. Then taking it back, I love the night when Daddy Meeks he comes into the boys' room and he says that he had a dream, like where it was just kind of like, and I believed him, Justin. I believed him, and it's just like, and some may still even question or not. Maybe it, I mean, I don't know if that was God. That was something else. Maybe it was the devil. I don't know, right? That I guess that also goes into religion. It's such a conversation starter. You know what I mean?
Yes.
Depending on what you
Hmm.
believe. So, but I do love that scene because I'm going off track. I do love that scene when he comes to the boys' room at night. The boys are just talking, excited, movies. And next thing you know, their dad wakes them up from their sleep as if something's wrong. You know how alarming that is to be waking out of your sleep. Oh, and just the fact that your dad's telling you something so insane. And I remember Fenton saying to him, "Well, maybe you were dreaming," and he's like, "No, he's not." And so then they don't hear anything. The next thing you know, he's bringing home pipes and stuff, like just weird things and gloves and then you have Adam who's excited about it, who feels like it's like a video game. You know what I mean? So it's just like it's one of those situations where it's just like, man, the build up, the intensity that's in this movie, like it's a lot. I love that parking lot scene as well. Again with the character Fenton, how he was crying and with this guy, I thought that was just a normal, regular guy until we found out that hey, he might have been or something.
Right.
So you have that, and then even the scene with this is also jumping ahead, but even the scene when Fenton pretty much, goes to the sheriff type of thing and brings him back, and the fact that they built that, like you said, like, and he ended up in it, but the fact that they built that, they dug up that hole, then they put a shed over it just so it can look normal. Like God told you to do all that. Like,
Right.
I don't know. It's a lot. Like, and it also just makes me wonder too. This is like jumping ahead. Like, why do you think that they didn't like run away? I remember at one point that's what they were saying. Well, Fenton wanted to, and then they just did it. And it's just like, yeah, where could they go? I mean, anywhere but there. Like, clearly, I just felt for the character, especially when he was just trying to explain to Adam, like, hey, Dad's not right. There's something wrong. Because we get to a certain point, you get to a certain age when you're old enough to know right from wrong. With Adam, like clearly he was at that age, but not saying that he was like his dad, but I still think that he was young. You know what I mean? He didn't really understand much. I think towards the end, obviously, he understood, but yeah.
I really want to speak though to something that you said about why they didn't just run away. And I think like Adam was so, like that's part of the thing I think watching it that made me frustrated with the character, but completely understand him because he's at that age, you get it. And I think you can be frustrated with kids, like even though
Yeah.
I don't know, I babysat or something, and it's like I know this is just a kid, but I'm still annoyed in the moment that they're drawing all over my wall or whatever it is. And
Right.
I think that like it's one of the things it's not overly discussed, but I think it's part of what makes Bill Paxton such a great director is the setup of the scene where they are talking about the movies, which is a great scene too, because it's like the last night of them ever having a normal life. Because
Hmm.
after that night, it all changes. And, after the events, even to when we get to the present, it's never going back. Like it never goes back to normal. So you see, though, in that scene, Fenton is really caring for his brother. Now, I do wonder too, because I kind of said my brothers would never have like acquiesced to me. They would have never compromised with me. But we have to look at the situation that they're Fenton probably does take on the role of mom a lot too, because they have their dad and he's a great dad. But Fenton does do all the cooking, and not
Hmm.
that I believe in gender norms,
I
etc., but
get it.
just to make my point. But I think that because Fenton is a caring older brother, not to suggest my brothers weren't, but
Hmm.
we're seeing it through Bill Paxton's direction that they didn't run away because Fenton wasn't going to run away unless Adam realized the wrongness of the situation. And I just think that's a really good point that you bring up because it is sort of frustrating to watch. Like, why wouldn't you just run away or this? But it's another element, I think, of the tragedy of this movie that because Fenton was a good older brother, and I want to really get into the details of whether or not I think Fenton would have gone. He's a so-called demon, but is he? Maybe these things turned him. It's a like you said, an interesting conversation starter. But I do think that like they didn't run away simply because Fenton already knew the heartbreak that Adam went through without having a mom. He didn't want to take away his dad unless he had to.
Yeah.
And to Fenton's own detriment, though, because it's the burden of being the older brother.
Hmm.
He's young too, but because he's 12 or so, he has just a little bit more life experience to know, whereas Adam is so still in that like self-centered, I'm a child, my world is narrow, my dad is everything. He loves his older brother, he idolizes his older brother, but his dad is God, in some respect.
I did have one more question for you, a little bit off topic, and hopefully you could answer because I feel like I've been trying to think about it, but I'm not too sure. Daddy Meeks, what happened? What triggered that in his, you know what I mean? Like, okay, he was clearly seeing something or something was happening when he would touch the bodies. And then these people, they weren't saints, not saying they deserve to be brutally murdered, right?
Right.
Um, what do you think just happened to him? Because it was just one day out the blue, right? He just started doing that.
Well, I mean, I think based on the ending, we're supposed to take it that he did get this vision, that it is all true, that he was sent on this mission from God. Now, I have an argument to be made about all of this when we get to the ending, so maybe I'll kind of answer it more
Okay.
specifically then. But I'm left with, and it's one of the things that I think is interesting, potentially dangerous about this movie, but
Hmm.
I think it is supposed to, because like Adam, if you notice, like it's the scenes where there's no videotape of Adam, that the one cop comes in. I forget, there's like two or three things to prove that
Yeah.
Adam was being protected. So I think that like we are supposed to take it as the old this that God was asking them to do this. But where I have some problems are what I love about the movie is that it's like this Old Testament idea
Mhm.
of God in contemporary times. But the problem I find with the movie too is that whatever you believe, if you believe in God or the Bible or this, you have to take the New Testament into account too, and
Mhm.
the love and the forgiveness and you can't, it's sort of I forget what biblical story it's. I don't know if it's Job or something, but like Abraham maybe, where God asks Abraham to kill his son
Mhm.
to prove that he loves God or something. So it's like it's a parable of that story. So like the fact in this situation, the thing I love about it is Bill Paxton will not kill his son, even though God is basically saying you need to put him on the list. So I think
Yeah.
it really does add these extra layers to it. But I think that we are supposed to kind of take it that, oh no, they were supposed to be demon hunters and stuff. But I have an argument for that, which I'm going to make in the climax. But yeah, as far as the sequences go, it's a very self-contained movie, very well crafted that you get from point A to point B very quickly. And I think that it all leads us to this great dramatic twist climax ending. So we'd gone through Fenton finally decides to stand up to his dad. Bill Paxton's character has been seeing, visions from this angel. This
Mhm.
angel has told him that him and his family they need to kill demons. Unfortunately, along the way, we find out that, from Fenton's point of view, these look like regular people. So Fenton decides to stand up to his dad, and after being forced down into the cellar to kind of go mad, to conform to these beliefs, Fenton fights back and kills his dad. What remains is Adam and Fenton. Young Adam, kills the demon victim guy in the cellar. And we now know that they kind of went through the foster system and they were left to the wind. So as we reach the ending, the whole movie, this has been narrated by Matthew McConaughey through being Fenton. Well, we learn as he's driving along with Powers Booth, this FBI agent, that this Fenton, this adult Fenton, played by Matthew McConaughey, is actually Adam. And what this whole journey has been is actually to target the FBI agent who is a demon,
Yeah.
according to all of this. So we find out Matthew McConaughey is not Fenton. He is Adam. And he kills the demon, the FBI agent. He takes Fenton out of his misery, for lack of a better phrase, and that the dad was telling the truth the whole time. It is a crazy twist that I did not see coming, but to be fair, it is kind of a deceitful twist because we have no reason to not believe that this is Fenton.
Right.
And it's a little concerning because then that means we, the audience, are put in the perspective of a demon, meaning we're supposed to not see this either. It is a cool ending. And normally I wouldn't like a deceitful twist, but it's needed for the movie. It's what gives you the gut punch.
Yeah.
And it is a cool ending. It's easy to believe throughout the movie that the dad is just going crazy and that Fenton was a hero, but it is more chilling to think, nope, it is a vengeful God. And you have to have faith to see actual demons, or else you might be a demon.
Hmm.
And that is pretty scary and maybe a little reckless. Now, I think we're supposed to believe the ending. I think that, that's the intent. But the thing is, and I do think there's an argument to be made here, is that we have been told by the revealed Adam that this whole time we were following an unreliable narrator.
Hmm.
Adult Fenton, played by Matthew McConaughey, is actually adult Adam. So on the surface, the trick is that the dad was telling the truth and Fenton was wrong if
Hmm.
we believe Adam. But Adam has already told us that he is a liar. And the film definitely plays out that there was like a glitch in the security cam and that he was being protected in every way. So I think that we can believe that Adam is protected by God. However, just however, if the dad was crazy and fully believed, what we could be seeing is Adam is crazy
Hmm.
too, and just thinking that everything has worked out.
Right.
So, to be clear, I think we are supposed to kind of go with the surface ending. And the chill that we are supposed to feel is that we'd better be good. We'd better not be demons. But I think that there is this like slight argument, genuine argument to be made that since this whole story is told from Adam, of whom is an unreliable narrator, that even what we see as a revealed truth can still be unreliable too. And I also have to wonder with this ending, if Fenton really is the demon of the story, would he have become a demon if these events had not happened? Being,
Right.
being locked in a dirt cellar for however many days, weeks it was, would
Hmm.
be enough to drive anyone to madness, to evil. So bigger questions of fate and faith are definitely being asked. But even though we are being tricked as the audience, and like I said, in some cases that would make me kind of mad because I like a twist, but I don't like being lied to. I did enjoy it here because it was something different at the time. I mean, one way or another, we all believe what we believe, but it is definitely a scary thought to think, of the Old Testament God, which is what we are definitely seeing here, and that faith is not about logic, and Fenton is all about logic. But it is an interesting idea to think that God would choose someone to lead his family down such a complicated road in contemporary times. A lot of ways is in a lot of ways, it is an Old Testament story in contemporary times, and we leave on this note that like, oh, Adam is sort of the hero after all, and he now has his own family. And I think
Hmm.
it's interesting to see, especially at this time in history, this idea of a religious film through a horror lens. In a different lens, this could have been like an inspirational story. Instead we are kind of left with God exists, and if you do not have complete faith, you should be very afraid. And I
Yeah.
think faith, I think faith is a good thing. I think it can be kind of dangerous in this context for sure, because like with young Adam, you all of a sudden have somebody who could target someone he doesn't like and
Hmm.
use this as an argument to get rid of him and just say he's a demon, which is pretty terrifying. And
Hmm.
again, from an Old Testament God in contemporary times, it is interesting. But I think that the New Testament beliefs are just as important to consider. And that's what makes Frailty so dark, because if you are religious and you believe in God and the Bible, then I think you also have to factor in the Old Testament stuff, but the New Testament stuff as well, like what Jesus had to say. So I think on the surface, we're supposed to look at it as like, oh, Fenton was never the guy that we were kind of following. Adam and the dad were right. But I do think that it needs to be taken into account the unreliable narrator. And if Adam, Matthew McConaughey's Adam, was telling a lie the whole time, what's to say that even though I know that the very end of the movie is like third persony, it's no longer the narration. I do still think it would be considered Adam's story, and he's already lied to us this whole time. And I think that's also chilling to think we're in the mind of then what would be a crazed serial killer
Yeah.
who, maybe in a Dexter fashion, like taking out, a serial killer who takes out other serial killers, great. But like we're still in the mind of a serial killer. So who's to say, hey, he's not really the bad guy. I just think it's one of those movies that you can't even though I think the movie gives us here's where you're supposed to land, I think it still has a lot of open-ended ideas, and I think that it's just Bill Paxton's directorial debut was something really special that I think has really gotten forgotten, and it's kind of gotten lost in the annals of time. And I think that like people definitely need to check out Frailty.
Mind blowing. Not even trying to sound dramatic. I did not see it coming at all. And then even when I've rewatched it, and I mentioned this a little bit earlier, I'm looking for clues, like even with the detective, I'm thinking, okay, I see something there, you know what I mean? But I love the fact that we don't know that it's coming because even if it is, you know that there's going to be a twist, but you're not expecting multiple ones. And kind of like what you were saying, what we talked about just beforehand, it was just kind of like, okay, I can't get over the fact that they made it seem like there's some type of supernatural power thing going on, you know? And in some ways, like I didn't complete the series at all because it had so many seasons, but it's kind of like Supernatural if they were hunting, actual people, so I like that, but the movie it left me feeling very disturbed because I agree with you where it's just kind of like, okay, Bill Paxton, right, with or Daddy Meeks, one day he just completely just changed, right? Where it just changed their lives forever. So where he just clung on to his religion, right? Some would say that that is someone blindly going into their religion. You know what I mean? Like having like blind faith. And I feel like the movie explores it like beautifully. You know what I mean? Because
Mhm.
it's still like the way he's speaking, it's like you really believe his character. So let me just take a step back because I feel like I'm jumping around. I left the film feeling the first time around very disturbed because again, this movie it explores religion. There's some family trauma that's going on. Clearly, there's murder, but the murder is through a lens of where they're trying to justify it, like a divine justification. And it's unsettling because even when I think about this, I have family members who are deeply, deeply religious. And I'm religious. I believe in God. So when I'm hearing this and God, he's saying that God told him to, and it's just like, okay, regardless of what you believe, that's kind of extreme. Why would God tell you to do that? Like that's kind of weird. Maybe it's somebody's probably telling you that. I don't think that that's God. If we want to say that, but it was just like the final twist, even with that final frame, everything, it's like I felt that I knew, I didn't. It just completely just flipped. So even when you said that, I totally forgot about that, where it's just like, okay, this is someone who lies. You can't really believe what this person is saying, right? But even at the very end, when he was with his wife, his pregnant wife at that, so it's like the cycle's still going to continue. It just felt like this is the kind of movie where you have to rewatch it. You know what I mean? You have to rewatch it in order to like spot clues. And then again, the thing that's just in my mind, what I feel like it's a great conversation starter is if Adam, the real Adam, and his dad, could they really see demons? You know what I mean? Like that's so insane. You told this elaborate, detailed lie, and we all believed you because you were targeting this person and then you got him where you wanted. But then it's just kind of like, okay, if this person, if they could really see these demons, were they justified? Were they justified in doing what they did, or were they just like delusional killers? And at one point, like I was saying to you earlier, I thought that they could see stuff supernatural. Like I thought that it was just not justified, but I thought that something was speaking to them. But then after rewatching it, at this point, they're delusional to me, because it's like I feel, and that's the thing, right? Who knows? I could watch this movie a year from now, 2 years from now, and it can completely change. I
Yep.
love the fact that the ending, but even not the ending, the whole movie, it blurs like there's a very blurred line between like justified and just pure madness. You know what I mean? And then again, what I was saying to you, if this is a thriller movie, right? It's not considered a horror. However, there are such horrific tones to it, and not in a way where it's like when you're watching a horror, not horror, there's jump scares. This one doesn't need a jump scare. This one has a very quiet, creepy tone to it, where it's just like it's more like a dark psychological type of feel because again we talked about with Fenton only being 12 years old taking taking care of his brother, but also kind of, you said, he's cooking, he's making sure his brother's doing his homework and he's eating. And next thing you know, your dad, who is your caretaker, comes home and tells you that this is what God wants you to do. Then you're digging up dirt. You don't want to go through a graveyard because you buried someone, the roses, it's just like all this stuff. And that's your childhood. Like at this point, no one would be normal after that. So it's understandable. Fenton, like his behavior, how he kind of seemed closed off from the world, and in some ways you could see that, but that also could have been that could have been a lie as well, right? So I don't know. I feel like this is the kind of movie that it really sticks with you, and not because, it's the gore or the action, but it made me question what's real. Still to this day, no matter, I remember seeing it as a kid, and then even seeing rewatching it now, there's still just this unsettling tone, and I'm unsure what to believe. And I feel like that's exactly what the movie is going for. And it's so unfortunate, RIP to Bill Paxton. I feel like we should have had like 20 more movies directed by him, at least.
100%.
So yeah, just he was very talented on screen, behind the screen, and just again the way the film, it was just it has that tight knit indie feel where it feels kind of cozy. It's just, again, it's just, this is one of my favorite movies. I feel like I can just talk about it always. And then just the last thing I did want to say, when it comes to Daddy Meeks, I think that his character is so interesting because it's just like, I wonder how he was, at his job. As an example, I bet that in their town that everybody thought that he was just such a stand-up guy, and he's doing the best that he could to take care of his two boys. And boys will be boys. Like even when Fenton was trying to tell the sheriff this stuff, and it was just kind of like, I mean, I'm not saying it was right for the dad killing him, but he kind of had to, because at this point he probably would have been keeping an eye on them. You know what I mean? There's some type of suspicion. Even if he would have never caught them, there would have been something that's there. So I kind of like that. So yeah, I really enjoyed the ending. Didn't see it coming. Even when I rewatch it now, the build up to it, like, it's like the kind of movie, no matter how many times you see it, it's like you still are like holding your breath.
I think that this movie does make you sort of think like these bigger questions. It always makes you want to watch it again to see a little bit more. And I think that this is for the horror fan that is looking for a really solid religious horror movie. It's not The Exorcist. It's not Stigmata. It's not taking these bigger themes and trying to like put it through a horror movie. In a lot of ways, the idea of a family killing demons could be an almost inspirational tale. But
Yeah.
through Bill Paxton's horror lens, this becomes a very dark but tragic story of this family that has already suffered. It's a story about this family trying to come to terms with possibly the father losing his mind, but instead it asks us these bigger questions, because you can believe the ending one way, you can believe the ending another way. And I think it's for the horror fan that does enjoy religious horror, but also enjoys the family element kind of mixed in with that, to really give this powerful story that bodes going back to watch time and time again. Well, thanks again, everybody, for joining us for another episode of the Rabid Dog's House, where we like to discuss lost or forgotten horror gems with a little bite. Are you a fan of Frailty? Do you believe the ending? Do you believe it's an unreliable narrator? Are you a fan of Bill Paxton? What are some of your favorite religious horror movies? Comment below. Thank you, Zena Dixon, the Real Queen of Horror, for joining us tonight. As always, you can find Zena over at realqueenofhorror.com, on YouTube under her Real Queen of Horror moniker, or over at Wicked Horror. And I'm Justin. You can also find me at Wicked Horror, 401 Pop Culture, or over at Blue Sky. Thank you, Zena, for joining me to talk about Frailty. I'm so glad we got to talk about this one. It's not one I get to talk about often, and I really do think people should get to see it.
Well said. I agree with you. I'm so glad that we finally did. And I feel like we've been talking about it for a while. So
yeah, it was definitely time.
This was a great discussion. And thank you for having me.
My pleasure. And comment below, everybody. Let us know what you think, and we'll talk to you next time. Bye.